Hey, this is Nicholas with the Backyard TARDIS here with another Random Thoughts podcast. This one we're going to be covering a Red5network Roundup for January and February of 2022. And this is being recorded in June, so it's long overdue. And if I don't quite capture what I was talking about in my notes right away, so I may not be as in-depth as I initially thought I would on some of these subjects, but one of the things, everybody was doing the same podcasts about it. It seemed like everybody was talking about, what was it? It was Spider-Man, I don't think the Batman was out yet, but Book of Boba Fett. It was like everybody had podcasts about the same things. So I'm not really going to talk about those things in particular. I'm going to mostly talk about specific other stuff that people talked about during their podcast. So the first one, Science Fictionary Podcast. We'll start out here with, it was mentioned that Neelix was the most hated Star Trek character. No, he is not. Neelix is beloved. Now, I think when you were doing this, you just started Voyager. First 3 seasons of Neelix are not that great. And it's not the actor's fault. The fault of it is the character of Kes. It really makes Neelix kind of creepy because he's got this underage character that he's in love with. Just the whole issue of Kes was that, but Neelix, as he grows as a character over the show, like he has tons of growth, and there's an episode where he just starts trying to do this and that, and he was inserting himself, and it's like he was worried because he was getting past the part of space where he could help Voyager, getting out of his known area, and he was thinking, I'm not going to be worth anything, I'm going to be thrown out. And so he grows and adapts, and he becomes a part of the crew, and his relationship with Tuvok, if it weren't for Neelix, Tuvok would be the most boring and bland character in the thing. So as much as Kes and the whole jealousy thing that was like making Neelix, on the other hand, Neelix makes Tuvok a better character. Just kind of the same way I think Tom Paris makes Harry Kim and B'Elanna Torres. I feel like apart, those 3 characters are not that great, but together they're really great. And that's why I feel about like Neelix, like, Neelix on his own is not that great, and he's definitely not great when he's with Kes. But Neelix and Tuvok, those two together are Star Trek gold. So Neelix, love that character, love the actor that does that. But if you're wanting to talk about most hated Star Trek character, I mean, Kes is probably up there, but she was very, in a sense, it's kind of hard to hate her. It just kind of, you just wish she wasn't there. Of course, there's all sorts of stuff in Discovery and stuff that are probably the most hated character but wasn't a big fan of Wesley Crusher. So that's another one there. But definitely, there is no way Neelix is the most hated Star Trek character. Okay, going on to the Escape podcast. You talked about the evolution of Batman with Chantel and Joker voice, and I love this. You went through the different ages and some of the main story arcs throughout the comics, and I love this. I'm fascinated with... I actually know the least about is Golden Age, but I like interested. I want to get into more of that. I do know quite a bit about the Silver Age. There's something about Silver Age Batman that I kind of enjoy. It's campy, it's lovable, but at the same time, that's not how I feel Batman should be. And then, there's kind of like the Bronze Age, which to me is the age of like Batman the Animated Series. This is like when they're coming out of that. That's really when I gravitate to Batman. So that it feels like they're trying to make Batman even darker than that lately, and I don't know. That's just not for me. I thought he was already pretty dark, pretty intense, but I really liked going over that and then going over Batman through the movies, because you did that kind of introduction about the comics and then going through the movies. And I have always told myself, like, different Batman are different ages of the comic, basically. And you have Jack Nicholson that really plays like he is a mob boss Joker, which is what, like, Golden Age, he's very much. You have Cesar Romero. He is very much Silver Age, and I would definitely say that, although I'm not a fan of him, like the more recent way that Joker's portrayed is definitely what Heath Ledger is. I don't know what Jared Leto's Joker is, but I do try to look at it that way. But I am such a, like, there's what Batman is to me, and I'm not a fan of the movies. I think in animation, the Batman has been done much better. And when I liked you going over, like, the different characters over the years that have come out, the different villains, you guys went in pretty in depth. And I definitely, I have to say, if I were to talk about what my favorite Batman movie, it's going to be '89, followed by Batman Returns. That movie, to me, I just love it. That's Batman. There are definitely flaws with it. I definitely have some nostalgia goggles on for it, but it just feels so much more like Batman to me than a lot of what's coming out now. So, but I definitely like that. Now, you had an episode, you were talking about Starship Troopers. And this is a movie that it's probably one of my first actual R-rated movies that I saw. Most of the R-rated movies I saw as a kid, we used to go to Walmart and get the PG-13 edition of an R-rated movie, or watch recorded off of television which was basically that cut. So like, when I saw Terminator, there was no nudity or cussing in it. I somehow got Starship Troopers and didn't know that it was ours. Somehow I rented that. My parents didn't notice it. The movie place didn't notice it. No one seemed to know. It was mislabeled, and it wasn't until later that I found out that, no, I was watching an R-rated movie. But I just remember putting that in, having no idea that was the movie that I don't know if it was in the wrong case or what it was, but I remember that being a very shocking movie. But there's been a thing that's been going around some of the nerd podcasts, and the Salty Nerds do that, because there's a scene in there with Dina Myers in the shower scene, and all the guys seem to be going gaga about, oh yeah, half star for Dina Myers. Cleavage, and it's like, nah. Lunar Girl's like, I don't get it. It's not like she has impressive. I was like, I have to agree, Lunar Girl. I don't get it. She's not like, I mean, she's not non-attractive, but she's not some impressive. And so, like, the way that a lot of people go gaga over that, I've never got that, because you'd think, for me as a kid, that was like one of my first exposures to nudity in media, that would be impactful on me, but it wasn't. When I saw Lunar Girl and her husband Dragon Buddy going back and forth about that, I thought that was funny. It made me laugh. Sidebar Cantina, speaking of Lunar Girl, going on there, they did one where they kind of talked about, like, the history of first-person shooters and all that, and they talked a little bit about different, like, Xbox being the real first console online. And I will say the Dreamcast definitely, I think, like, having Quake and stuff on Dreamcast online was a big deal. But I personally am not a first-person shooter fan. I stink at them, horrible at them. And probably you were talking about GoldenEye and how everybody had GoldenEye. And it's funny, for as little as the N64 sold, because the N64 did not sell well. it is one of Nintendo's worst-selling consoles of all time. I mean, it's not Wii U bad, but I mean, it was pretty bad. And if it weren't for the Game Boy during that time, like Nintendo would have gone under. If all they had to rely on was the N64, all the money they were pumping into that. And yet, the thing about the N64 is it was local 4-player. That was like the big thing. And so everywhere you went, you all had one buddy who had it, and everybody would go to his house and play. They'd play GoldenEye, they'd play Mario Kart, they'd play Smash Brothers, they'd play Star Fox. Like, these were the things that you went to this house, Mario Party, these group 4-player games. This is what you did. I have spent hours in GoldenEye. I have not spent, I think Battlefront was the next one, and maybe I spent an hour trying to be okay into the Battlefront in the first Xbox. But I spent hours at GoldenEye. I got someone decent, and the thing is, I can't do the twin stick. I am completely unable. So what everybody says is like horrible controls, and if you go back and it's all nostalgia goggles. For me, it's one of the only ones I can actually control. And but I still stink at it. I mean, I was so bad that people would let me play as Oddjob. Then next, Sidebar Cantina talked about the special editions. I have mixed feelings about these because, of course, as somebody who was born in '85, I didn't get to see the Star Wars movies in theater. So this was how I was able to see those. However, and I will also say, George Lucas came, my closest theater at this age was actually in Modesto, George Lucas's hometown. So he went in and he did up the theater real nice for these. He spent a lot of money on that. And I know he upgraded a lot of theaters around the world, but this local one, it was nice. It was big fanfare. You know, we always had stormtroopers, all that kind of stuff for when the movies came out. But for the special editions, I think Empire Strikes Back is a perfect example of special editions. But I look at like that, what is it, Scene 38 or whatever that they do, the Obi-Wan versus Vader fight. I look at how amazing that is. And that something like that didn't get put into the special edition, but what did? Now, I was somebody who, I used to rent, even though we had the VHSs of Star Wars, I used to rent the editions with the deleted scenes and the scene with the guy that was Jabba. Like, I used to rent that VHS and watch that version of Star Wars. And was fascinated by this. So when they did the scene with Jabba, I was like, that's amazing. Looking back at it now and how hokey it is, how horrible the CGI has been, it's bad. And then seeing whole the timeline of Jabba not being super fat, being super fat in the prequels, and really confusing there. What did he have, liposuction? I think the way that they should have done it is they should have had a little droid roll up and have it been a hologram. Then Han Solo could walk around. He could walk through the hologram of Jabba's tail. But if Jabba was really there, Han wouldn't be leaving alive. But if it was a hologram, a message, like Greedo dies, maybe even have Boba Fett in the background, like, yeah, I'm delivering this message. And you shape up where something's going to serious happen. But have Han talking to Jabba like he does, being a little bit more cocky, a little bit more, not how you would talk to Jabba in person. Because this is somebody we're supposed to be super afraid of. Having it be just a digital transmission with a little hollow image, I think would be a lot better. So that's how I do that. Everything done to Return of the Jedi in the special editions makes Return of the Jedi so much worse. And that's very frustrating because Return of the Jedi is often regarded as, it's the kiddie one. It's the one that kind of sticks out as a sore thumb. If you were young enough when you watched it, you love it. otherwise, or teddy bears. There's a ton of things that he could have digitally enhanced. Maybe made some scenes to make the Ewoks seem more powerful, more impressive. Um, there's more. He could have done some stuff to Jabba, but because he went too far in Jabba's palace, instead of just adding a little thing here or there, he went too far. It just like completely took away from that scene. The Sarlacc, oh, that just so less intimidating when it's just got one little mouth, instead of it being like just the whole pit is a mouth. And then the ending. I love the Ewok celebration. It is, and the fact that is like cut out, like I don't mind him adding the other stuff, but keep the Ewok stuff there. And then cutting out the actor who played Anakin. He's in so little of Star Wars. He gets so little recognition. Like to cut that little bit out and to take that away from him, you can't do it. Okay. Press Play Studios. Well, I probably would have had more to say earlier on, but your 80s and 90s trivia nights were a blast. I thoroughly enjoyed these. 80s and especially 80s, but like obviously I was a little older during the 90s, so I'm going to get some of that, but I'm a big consumer of 80s stuff, so really enjoyed that. That was a fun time. Both Press Play and Rogue One covered Spaceballs. Spaceballs is another movie. I love the comedy of this movie. However, I will admit, as an adult, I don't really like crude sex humor. But I saw this movie as a kid before I understood any of it. And so there's a ton of things that to me, like half man, half dog, I'm my own best friend, I'm a Mog, let the Swartz be with you, the merchandising joke. So much of this movie just like sticks with me. Winnebago, like whenever I see a Winnebago, I go Spaceballs. Every time. My whole concept of like the alien coming out, like to me, I was always, if I saw that somewhere, I'm like, oh, that's Spaceballs. And everybody looks at me like, no, that's Alien. That's not Spaceballs. Baseballs took it from Alien. But for me, of this. But here's the thing. I hadn't watched this in years, and I watched this on TV many times as a kid. All the jokes went, phew. So here I am, a young minister, right? And I've been assigned to study the Bible with a young one who is from a step family situation, and they're like, oh, can you give him encouragement and this, and he is like deep thinker, wonderful study, teaching him the Bible, but he was like a deep thinker into tons of sci-fi stuff. And I mentioned a joke from Spaceballs, because we're talking about Star Wars parodies and stuff, funny stuff like that. And you're like, what? And I'm like, and he's like 12, 14 or something like that. Probably about 12 at this time. And I'm just like totally taken back that he hasn't seen Spaceballs. And so I'm like, we'll watch it after the next Bible lesson. So sure enough, we do that. I put it on, and it's everybody's decision whether they watch it or not, but typically you don't send your kid to Bible lessons to have them come back and say a bunch of crude jokes. And we got, I don't know, maybe 15 minutes in, maybe 20, I don't know, that first scene where the ship keeps going over and over and over, it takes quite a bit of time. But all of a sudden when I realized everything was a sex, I was like, we got to turn this off now. It's like, you can ask your parents if they'll let you watch it, but you're not watching it with me. But that is pure humor. used and abused. So you had Lunar Girl on. She's, for someone who won't do her own podcast, she's sure making the rounds on these podcasts. But she mentioned she doesn't like the Rams because they wouldn't let her touch their Super Bowl ring. I find that funny because I have a problem with the 49ers, and it's for the exact opposite. So we had one time, two 49ers actually lived close to where I grew up, and they came and visited the school. And they basically, they gave a little speech, this and that, and then they said, autographs and all that kind of stuff. But they basically said that, you need to, if you would like to kiss our Super Bowl ring and get an autograph, form up a line. And the boys and girls in my class, they were all doing it. They were coming out and they were kissing these guys' rings. And as someone who's very religious and something like the veneration, the hero worshiping there, and the fact that these people, it wasn't like that. Like some people did it as a gesture. They pretty much demanded, like that was part of, you kiss our ring, we'll give you an autograph. Kiss our ring, give you an autograph. And they went through the whole and all these kids, and I'm in like fourth grade, and that pretty much killed any and all interest I had in professional sports. I pretty much hated football from that day on. Like I was like, but the one thing I will do, and the big rival that the 49ers had that year, because the Raiders were not doing well, their big rival was Dallas Cowboys, who were, even though they had those Super Bowl rings, at this point the Cowboys were way big. And I started to root for Cowboys. I was a Californian rooting for Cowboys, and like that is like the one thing in California. Like you can be a Raiders fan, a Rams, or this. You can be all these different things. You can be a Green Bay Packer fan, whatever. You cannot be a Californian and be a Dallas Cowboys fan. Like that is like the one no. And I was like, I don't care. That's what I am. No matter what, I want the 49ers to lose, and I'm a Cowboys fan. And I just took that thing because I was just so disgusted with it. So I find that funny that you had the opposite. Like you don't like them because they wouldn't let you touch it, and I don't like them because they were demanding people kiss it. Like kids kiss it. Like you shouldn't be showing up to a school and demanding kids kiss anything. That's just my stance there. Extra techie. Boy, we've had some interesting discussions back and forth, and first of all, I want to say that I don't ever want to come across, if I do, as somebody who's ranting or trying to yuck your yum and say don't like this. I thoroughly enjoy that you enjoy a lot of the newer stuff like the High Republic and stuff like that, and but I like dialogue, and I kind of like you actually bring up points and stuff. You don't just blindly like stuff. You bring out what you like. And you covered Heir to the Empire, the first of the Thrawn trilogy. And, I think, one, it had been hyped up so much, so you were just expecting like to be blown away, like it to be so much more, and you were noticing, hey, there's this, there's that in the High Republic. Hey, there's this that everybody's saying is so amazing. It's here, nobody's looking at it. And then you got to the end, and you were kind of like that. But there were a couple of things you mentioned, like you were like, the guy that said it's a trap. Why do we care about Emerald Akbar? You got to remember, at this point, Star Wars is small. The people that are in the original trilogy, that's all the people. We don't have the prequels. We don't have the Clone Wars. We don't have Rebels. We don't have this menagerie of all these characters. So giving characters like Admiral Akbar and Mon Mothma like huge backstory is something that the EU did. There's whole books dedicated to Wedge Antilles. That's the kind of stuff. There's books dedicated to Lando. There's books, they all have it. So why do we care? Because he's a big character. And why not make that character important than trying to just make a new character and make him important? Like, They're taking a character that we saw on screen and they're making him a big character. So it's not so much that, like, why should I so much care about him, as that why wouldn't, why would you necessarily care about a new character? So he's doing there. Another thing that I want to say is this is very much a trilogy. And much like, other than A New Hope, like, you look at the prequels, you look at the first movie isn't necessarily standalone. These 3 books are one story. So you've basically only made it a third of the way through the book. If it takes too long to read it, I would definitely suggest taking out the audio dramas. How I initially listed, I had those audio dramas on cassette, popped it into my Teddy Ruxpin, and yeah, Ground Thrawn and Lord Sabaoth coming through Teddy Ruxpin's mouth may have given me nightmares, made me put Teddy Ruxpin in the closet every night, but where I couldn't see him. But boy, it was an amazing way to experience Star Wars back in the 90s. And I do think, though, the old cliche, everything in Star Wars rhymes. When you get to the last book, and, they call it the Thrawn trilogy for a reason. And you by that time, like, you get to really know Thrawn. And you'll get to realize why he's such a big deal. Why, when he showed up in Rebels, everyone was like, "Where's Thrawn?" Now, these aren't the only books he shows up in Legends, but this is quite essential, the Thrawn story. And I think, and Mara Jade, another character, if you're just going by her in this book, why would you care about her? Everybody goes on and on about how much they love Mara Jade. Why? This book did nothing for you. It's a trilogy. Right now, she's like Lando in Empire Strikes Back. Like, who thinks of Lando as a big hero after Empire Strikes Back, but then after Return of the Jedi, whoa, Lando is a cool dude. Definitely, here's my thing. If you do the other 2 books, because I know it's motivation, you're a little burnt out, you burnt out everything trying to get ready for Kenobi, all that, but after Kenobi's over and all that settles down, if you cover the other 2 books and do a video on each of those, I'll let you pick out 3 High Republic books and I'll do videos on the High Republic. So, and in fact, if you say, "Hey, I'm going to do it," you've already done one of the books, I'll go ahead and start a High Republic book. So they've not done anything that has convinced me to buy one. I've listened to your coverage, stuff like that, but there's nothing's grabbed me, and that's my big thing with the High Republic, has been advertising, lack of good advertising. But that's my thing. If you want to check me out, I definitely want you to check this out. So check those other 2 books out. Please, please, you cannot judge it until you've consumed the trilogy. I mean, it'd be like just watching Empire Strikes Back as a standalone movie. It wouldn't work. This requires you to watch them all. Okay. Lore Be With You podcast. Grisham Fandom Geek, he did a really interesting philosophy of the Sith. And I truly enjoyed this stuff. And he went into like a lot of stuff about Nietzsche. And I thought that was very interesting to have the Sith follow these philosophies of right and wrong. Because a lot of like Nietzsche and that stuff at the time went very contrary to Christian thought, which you could say is very much the Jedi. But as you were talking this and going into this, that got me thinking and looking at it that way. And what happened to the Jedi Order felt very much like what happened to the Jews during the Jesus time, and then in a lot of Christendom today, a lot of Orthodox religion. It becomes more about rule and losing the heart of the law, so to speak. The Jewish leaders were making up all these additional rules about what was clean, what was unclean, what they had to do, what this, that, this is this, trying to specify everything down to the little detail, and they were losing the purpose of why the law was made. And Christianity has done that a lot today. They get caught up into that, and this is the rule, this is not the rule. And the rules are important, but it's also important to know the reason for the rules, because if you understand Bible principles, then you really can get into the mind of Christ, so to speak. So I thought it was interesting when you look at certain characters in that are often referred to as gray Jedi, or like Jedi that paint outside the lines. And to me, I don't like that term, gray Jedi, because they're not gray. If anything, they're pure Jedi. I like that term better. Not gray Jedi, not shady Jedi. They're not anti-hero Jedi. They're pure Jedi. Qui-Gon, Ahsoka, these different ones, they are pure Jedi because they go by the Spirit. They go by the principle of the law and not necessarily the letter of the law. And once you understand the principles, you don't get lost in the minute looking for the yes, no, yes, no. Then you can actually understand the purpose of why you're there, what you're doing. And so that just kind of like opened up my mind. So that's kind of an interesting thing. It's like looking at these characters everybody refers to as the gray Jedi. And the gray has a very anti-hero notion, or or vigilante type thing. Oh, they color outside the lines. But no, I look at them not as gray Jedi, but as pure Jedi. And which is funny because you were talking about the Sith, and all the while this is where my mind was going. Salty Nerd Podcast. You do your new thing that you're doing is that you have every month you're doing a different classic sci-fi. You're letting the Patreons kind of pick it, but you guys are picking it also. It's kind of a unique thing, but to bring in where you're doing 15-minute non-spoiler and then the spoiler discussion, and you're doing an episode every week for a month on that show. Boy, I didn't quite understand all that when I was approached by Kadish asking me to pick out what episodes I'd want you guys to watch. And my mind's racing, but then he's like, and of course I was immediately going to pick out some Eccleston episodes, but Kadish doesn't like Eccleston. So he's like, no, none of those. And he was like, well, you got to do Christian Invasion because it explains who the Doctor is. Well, an Eccleston episode would do that, but no. Okay. And then I'm thinking like, okay, if I want, Alex is going to want dinosaurs. Oh, well, there's no dinosaurs in the David Tennant episodes. Okay. Well, the best David Tennant episodes are all two-parters. I asked, would that be 1 week or 2 weeks? And he said, that would be 2 weeks. I'm like, oh, well, I don't want to waste all that. What if somebody doesn't like it? Then that's 2 whole weeks that they're going to be in a cliffhanger. I don't want to do that. So my favorite episode out of all who, Silence in the Library, that can't do that. Right off the bat, they do that with the other shows. Like they'll have a 2-parter 1 week, and I'm like, no. Silence in the Library, Forest of the Dead, like that would have. Sorry, still getting over COVID. Totally went in. Now, I did do you a disservice. I did the Water of Mars, and I have to keep in mind sometimes that I like the wacky, I like the kooky stuff. Like, so you guys were kind of like, okay, this is a little bit of a leap. For me, compared to what some Doctor Who does, this was not a leap. I got what some of your complaints were, but I have to say, part of the disservice, I wish I could have been a part of this discussion, because the Water of Mars kicked off a giant multimedia event of 2020. There was a thing that has been teased through Doctor Who in the past, in classic Doctor Who, about Time Lord Victorious, that he was supposed to be the leader of the Time Lords. And at the end of that, he declares himself, he finally accepts that mantra of Time Lord Victorious. And Jude goes, well, they never really go anywhere with that. And you're kind of right. They don't. They kind of had a thought that they might, but then they didn't. They did in other media. And then in 2020, they said, you know what? We're going to do a story about this. And we're going to do it across 3 different comic companies. We're going to have an animation studio come out and do some YouTube shorts. We're going to have 2 different audio drama companies do that. We're going to have a novel company do that. We're going to have another one that's going to do heroes from Eagle Moss. They're going to do their own models, each one of them with a whole little short story booklet. Across that, we're going to do live stage drama things. We're going to do escape rooms. We're going to have a little board game, just complete everything. We're even going to have a t-shirt that has like a only shows up in glow in the dark, but you can't see it during the day. Secret message that's going to be part of the story. Just complete multimedia blowout where he goes back to the beginning of the universe and they create this character called the Cthulhu, who go at the birth of every universe and go through and decide every species how long their lifespan is. And before that, everybody was going to live forever, but they basically say, you know what? We're going to judge you from the entire existence of time, what your species is worth, and decide how long you live. And the Doctor decides he's going to go into that thing and he's going to kill them. He's going to eliminate them and eliminate death forever. And completely redo the universe. And he's gone too far. And it takes 2 other incarnations of the Doctor, along with the Daleks and a legion of vampires, to go back in time and stop him. Because he's gone that far. He's gone too far. And to me, one of the reasons why I love The Water of Mars is it shows David Tennant's range of acting. Because through most of it, he's like, oh, well, yeah, you know, he's acting. He's wacky. He's crazy. He's the Doctor. But then, I'm the Time Lord. You know, like, he does it. He has that, but as an episode, it shows that range. So when you guys were like, I want to see more of that, you do get to see more of that in the show. It's just that was a good spot to show that distinction, to show those different sides of him. So it's one of those things, I think, if, when I tried to do the watch along with you, I got no sound. So I wasn't able to really tell what you were watching. But it was one of those things, so you were commenting on some of like the dialogue and stuff, and I was trying to remember it as best as I could. But I really think I was projecting a lot of my Who knowledge on it, a knowledge of things that happened before that if you don't have that context, it's not that impactful. And that's bad on me. I know a whole bunch of the chat wants you to watch the 50th, and I was kind of like, no. So I have basically, if you're willing to give Who more chances, and I hope you will, I hope my patronage helps motivate that. I have a couple more Who that I'd like to do. I would definitely like to do, it's a bummer because I would have, instead of Water of Mars, I would have done the Silence in the Library one. I think that would have been a big one to finish off David Tennant. Also, a lot of what I want to do with the next Doctor has to do with that. Now, all that said, have a dilemma. Because one, you have to see that first. But for the next Doctor, I know we got to do those dinosaurs. And there's some good dinosaur episodes in that. And I could do a whole one that's nothing but Doctor Who and the dinosaurs. But there's also a really, really cool plot that involves killing Hitler and the landing on the moon and conspiracy aliens and all sorts of stuff that I think you guys would love. But there's also the 50th in that. So I probably have at least 2 more months worth of stuff. So whenever, I know you got tons of other things you want to do, but when you get around to it and you start going, oh, we got to throw Nick a bone, we got to do some more Doctor Who. I have some really good, and now that Jude's watching it, me and Jude should work on it. So I think maybe Jude will pick it out a month, and me and her can work on what we can do to acquire Alex. Because I think there's definitely some conspiracy ones there, some good stuff there, and if you guys are willing to cover this episode, but willing to do another, because I could do probably one that you guys would love, but it would pretty much be a whole month of 2-parters. So every week watching 2 episodes. But let me know. I definitely think that I have a list that would be if you want to fall in love with Doctor Who, I have the Doctor Who that would make there. And I think Matt Vader might actually like Peter Capaldi, the 12th Doctor, the one after the next Doctor after the one you watch, because he's a little bit older, a little bit crankier, and a little bit more snarky. He whatever you do, don't check his browser history, and he's the kind of guy that there's a point where he's almost having a midlife crisis, so to speak, and he decides, what, I'm going to go to a gladiatorial ring and introduce rock and roll to the Romans. Or he has a thing where there's an episode with him and the Vikings, and it's funny. And so I think there's some stuff there that Vader might like. Some stuff he might not, but some stuff he might. So I think if I was just trying to appeal to Matt Vader, like I was supposed to, I would have picked different episodes. And if I was just trying to appeal to Alex, I probably wouldn't have even done the 10th Doctor. Just because I think some of the episodes specifically, while I think he might like the 10th Doctor better than the 11th Doctor, I think episode-wise, I think there's more in the 11th Doctor era that he's going to like better. Okay, WSTR. We're getting towards the end of this here. WSTR, favorite John Williams music. Okay, well, let's get the Star Wars stuff out of the way. I gotta say, my favorite Star Wars music, there's the Imperial March, there's Luke looking out at the sunset, and then just the initial Star Wars theme as the credits roll. Those are probably my favorite of John Williams. But you were talking about what outside of that, and the first reveal of the dinosaur theme in and if you haven't listened to the soundtrack show on it, that it is beautiful, but the dinosaur theme in Jurassic Park, that hits me every time. To me, that is peak John Williams. Of course, I really love and he goes dun da 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 dun da 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 da. That has stuck with me forever, and I still, my daughter's never seen Indiana Jones. We'll be riding around on the quad. I'll be taking around on the property of this, and I'll just start humming that until Daddy, stop that, because I just love the Indiana Jones theme. So probably the Indiana Jones theme, the dinosaur theme from Jurassic Park. And then, of course, those 3 from Star Wars are probably my favorite of John Williams. But, no. Favorite has to be Superman. That theme, Believe a Man Can Fly, like that. It is so hopeful. I just love that theme. So there you have it. That's John Williams has done so many things. Yes, Jaws is super like memorable and knowable, and E.T. and this that. He's done so much, so much. But that to me is what I would consider like. And here's the interesting thing: I actually put all those on a CD. And it's funny, the only non-John Williams I think the only non-John Williams music I have is some of the Star Trek movie music is on that CD. But outside of that, because it is basically my orchestral movie music CD that I listen to sometimes when I'm driving, and the only thing that isn't John Williams is Star Trek. So that just goes to show you just how impactful he was in that. Okay, the last thing is we're rounding this out, trying to keep this one a little bit shorter. Everybody talked about the Book of Boba Fett. So I guess I'll talk a little bit about the Book of Boba Fett, if I haven't already done that to death. Biggest thing, the mods, like this. But let's talk a little bit about what I liked about the Book of Boba Fett, because I haven't done a whole lot of that. So since I already had my last podcast kind of ranted about the Book of Boba Fett, let's talk about some of what I liked. So I think Finnick was done really well in this. Obviously, the Mandalorian episode was just amazing. Just amazing. I love where they're going with that. Then the Luke stuff, really good. I would love for a Jedi Academy series where Luke was just the instructor. The show was actually about some students, like it was in the EU, and Luke would be an instructor. They'd show him giving a class or a lesson every now and then, but it would be about the students like leaving, and then so that they could have whole episodes that didn't even have Luke show up. And most of the time, you're just seeing like the back of the head of Luke or something like that. But they've shown that they can do enough of it that I would love that. They've recently made that comment that they're going to get away from that. I say he's not going to be around forever and able to do that for very much longer, so do it while you can. Let's see. It's hard. I really liked the stuff with the Tusken Raiders. And of course, then what happens really takes the air out of that. But I really loved like seeing their culture, seeing that. And a lot of people are like, oh, nobody can be bad anymore. This like, I never thought of them as pure evil. I never did. Like they were just an alien species that didn't like outsiders. That didn't necessarily look at them as like, maybe that was more of a prequel thing. But I like the Native American vibe that they give. Or like Australian Aborigine. Black Chrysanthemum. Like when he turns and he like the facial expressions they gave him, like that is. After seeing that, I am a little disappointed that we did not get more of that from Chewbacca in the sequels. Like, the technology is there now to do that, and to do it that well, that there were times when, like, Chewbacca, like, it really stands out when you put Chewbacca in a world where there's all these CGI aliens, he really starts standing out as being less. It's just like if you were to put one of the Ewoks in Mos Eisley, like they would stick out like a sore thumb. When they were in their movie and all that in that element, it worked. Everything was practical. But if you were to put a bunch of them versus a bunch of CGI aliens, like it would not work. Like them versus an army of Gungans versus an army of Ewoks, like they would look very silly looking. And the Gungans would like totally stand out to see, like it clashes. So I would like, after seeing how they did Black Chrysanthemum, I would like to see a Chewbacca that had more facial expression. Because that was like, just seeing the way his eyes dilated and stuff like that, that was really cool. I really liked that. And I have to say that when everything's said and done, as much as I had a problem with the Book of Boba Fett, I don't feel like it did permanent damage to me. I feel like they could turn around and have Boba Fett be the character we want him to be and show up in Mandalorian and act like we want him to show, and it wouldn't hurt. And it's just like, it's kind of like the prequels. You look at the prequels, and I don't like those movies, but I look at all the Clone Wars stuff, and I go, okay, something basically to the event of those movies, like that happened. That's the story. That's the basic structure of that. And I kind of like delete scenes out of my brain and that kind of stuff. The same could be done with Book of Boba Fett. I'm still on board for where it goes next. The big thing I took away from that is if they don't have the budget, if they can't do it, or if they're trying to do something and it's not working, don't release it. Don't release it until it's perfect. Don't release it until you know it's something truly special. Don't give us mediocre Star Wars. I would love for every one of those characters from the Empire Strikes Back, all those bounty hunters, to get their own TV show. I would follow all of them on bounty hunter missions, but not if they're going to be like the Book of Boba Fett. Like, I want, Dominic Pace character, Gecko the Bounty Hunter. I'd love a Gecko the Bounty Hunter Disney Plus show. I would watch it. Bounty of the Week. But not if it's going to be like Book of Boba Fett. So, I'm not going to get tired of Star Wars, but this has told me that I'm not going to always watch something no matter what. So, that's kind of my end thoughts of the Book of Boba Fett. I'm not truly offended if people liked it. I'm not truly offended if people didn't like it. I thought it was okay. I thought it had some really bad spots. I really, really don't like the mods. And the fact that the whole mod chase scene was supposed to be a tribute to Back to the Future Part 2. Because it's one of the things I love about The Mandalorian and these different shows is all the tributes they do to different movies. That's very disappointing because that is literally one of my favorite movies of all time. I like that movie better than Star Wars. And they have one of my most disliked episodes of Star Wars TV and say, oh, it's an homage to one of my favorite movies of all time. And that just makes it suck that much more. So that's just me. But overall, Grogu versus Rancor was cute and adorable, and I loved it. I don't care what you say. That was amazing. Anyways, that is my Red 5 Network Roundup for January and February. As we get closer and closer to it, I'm going to have more thoughts and have more in mind. But those are just some of the things I was enjoying. What have you been listening to podcast-wise? What have you been enjoying? There are over 40 or 37 different podcasts in the Red 5 Network. Keep adding another 10 for some reason. But that's a lot of podcasts. So truly something there for everybody to enjoy. And they don't just talk Star Wars. They talk everything in geekdom. Hope everybody has a good day. And I will catch you in the next video.